Good morning to one and all. On behalf of Study Circle, I invite you to the 77th session. Today's topic is Law of Adoption, Personal Law vis-a-vis Juvenile Justice Act, and our resource person for the day is Mr. M. Ajmal Khan, Senior Advocate in the Madras High Court. I now invite Mr. Ashok Pati to give the welcome address.
Good morning, everybody. Today, the topic is about adoption with respect to the personal law and vis-a-vis the Juvenile Justice Act. And the speaker for the day needs no introduction, but however, I take it as a privilege to introduce him to you all. And he is a person who has been in the bar for many years, and he started his practice from the office of G. Masilamani, and subsequently he had run the office of Mr. K.S. Ahmed, former government pleader, and from there he started his own practice with his voracious practice in civil writ and civil service laws, attained very good name and reputation for himself. Subsequently, when the High Court of Madurai was formed, he had shifted his practice to Madurai, where there was no stopping, and he had climbed great heights. A person who has been very interested in the academic law also has had the benefits of going through various numbers of judgments, and which we had also benefited in our previous sessions, where he had given a very good lecture and citing various number of judgments. And today the topic is so good that in fact it lives to the present situation, wherein there has been a paper article also showing the importance of adoption law, and especially with respect to the present pandemic. So with this, I will not take much time before you and the speaker. So I call upon the speaker to make his address. Thank you, one and all.
Good morning to the organizers, my friends, members of the study circle, and to everybody who participated not in the webinar. I have been asked to speak on the topic, the concept of adoption, personal law vis-a-vis Juvenile Justice Act. The title of the topic is necessitated because we have in India personal law governing adoption and the secular law governing adoption. Till the Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was enacted by the Parliament, we did not have the benefit of secular legislation governing the law of adoption. And we allowed to depend only on the personal law of different faiths. And so far as India is concerned, some faiths acknowledges and recognizes adoption, and some faiths do not. The concept of adoption and the practice of adoption is prevalent and is in vague in India for more than centuries. In Hindu law, it is more sacrament, and that has been followed. Before the adoption was given statutory recognition by the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956. Even the Hindu is entitled to adopt only son, because as per the Shastra of Hindus, if a person dies without a son, he will go to hell. That is called Puta. So to avoid going to the hell, if there is no son, they used to adopt, a Hindu used to adopt a son. And it is more a sacrament. And moreover, the object behind adoption of children under Hindu law is to secure the performance of funeral rites and to have a continuance of the right of lineage after him. These are all the object behind adoption under the Hindu law. Though Article 44 of the Constitution of India contemplates that the state shall ensure common civil code for all citizens, attempt has been made by the state to enact common law governing adoption for all subjects in India, but it failed till the Parliament enacted the Juvenile Justice Act. Even if you take Juvenile Justice Act 2000, the law does not say that the law will apply irrespective of religions for all subjects in India. That I will come to later. And therefore, now we will come to the personal law governing adoption for Hindus. Before going to deal with the personal law of Hindus insofar as adoption is concerned, let us see what is adoption. We all know in colloquial term what is adoption. Adoption, as defined under the Hindu Adoption Maintenance Act or the Juvenile Justice Act, is only this. It's permanent separation of a child from the biological parent and entrusting the child to the adoptive parent with all rights and privileges, including the right of inheritance and the responsibilities, as if he is a biological son of adoptive father. This is what the definition for adoption, both under the Hindu Adoption Maintenance Act and under the Juvenile Justice Act 2015. That is the law now is in force insofar as the secular legislation is concerned. Insofar as Hindu law is concerned, as I said, prior to the practice of adoption was in vogue for more than centuries among the Hindus. It has got statutory recognition in 1956 by the enactment of Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956. Under Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956, the law will apply for Hindus, and also for Sikhs, Buddhist, Jains. Buddhist, Jains, and Sikhs were brought within the definition of Hindus insofar as applicability of Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956 is concerned. And it specifically excludes its applicability to the Muslims, Christians, and Parsis. Earlier, attempt has been made by the Parliament to enact a common law for governing adoption for all subjects irrespective of religion. A bill called Adoption of Children Bill 1972 was placed before the Parliament in 1972. That will apply for all citizens irrespective of religion. But that was opposed by Muslims on the ground that it inroads into the personal law of Muslims. And therefore, after a stint effort, it was dropped. And thereafter, in 1980, a bill was placed before the Parliament twice. That bill called the Adoption of Children Bill 1980. That applies to all religion except Muslims. Again, the said bill of 1980 was also opposed. This time by Parsis on the ground that it offended and it inroads into the personal law of Parsis. And therefore, again, the passing of the bill, though it was placed before the Parliament twice, was dropped. And ultimately, the Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was enacted. Of course, in the present case, without naming any religion, without stating that the law will apply to all subjects irrespective of religion or not. Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was enacted. Later, interpretation was given by the Supreme Court that I will come to later. Now, insofar as Hindu personal law is concerned, as I said, it has got statutory recognition in 1956. And the object is only purely sacrament, that is not in the interest of the adoptive children, as in the case of the secular legislation, namely the Juvenile Justice Act. It contemplates, 1956 Act contemplates that the persons who are capable of giving adoption, that he should be a Hindu and he should have capacity to take in adoption. Likewise, the person who gives his child in adoption should have capacity and he should also be a Hindu. Then the consent of the spouse in case of couple, then the consent is mandatory. And thereafter, the conditions of a valid adoption. Insofar as the condition is concerned, if a person wishes to adopt a son, he should not have any son of his own. Likewise, if he wishes to adopt a daughter, he should not have a daughter. Likewise, the consent of the spouse is necessary in case of adoption of child, either male or female. Then the difference, adoption of opposite sex. If a man wants to adopt a girl, then the difference in age should be 21 years. Likewise, a female wants to adopt a son, then the difference in age should be 21 years. And finally, giving and taking, giving the child in adoption and taking the child in adoption. Earlier, the Datta Homam ceremony was made mandatory, but under the Act, 1956 Act, though it can be performed and it is not an essential ingredient for a valid adoption under the Hindu law. And once adoption is given, a child is adopted, then the effect of adoption is the child will become the son or the daughter of the adoptive parent, as if the child is a biological child, and it is entitled to all rights and privileges, as if the child was born to the adoptive parent. And there cannot be any consideration in terms of money for such adoption. These are all certain characteristics of a valid adoption under the Hindu law, that there is no dispute in it. Then let us come to there is no dispute, and insofar as Hindus are concerned, without reference to the court, they can adopt a child provided they satisfy these conditions as enumerated under section 7, 8, 10, and 11. Then that is sufficient. Once the adoption is valid or not, then it is for the court to decide on the strength of evidence placed before the court. And the child who is to be given in adoption should be less than 15 years of age, and he should not be a married person unless the customs permit so. If a Hindu wants to adopt a son who is more than 15 years of age, if there is a custom prevalent in that community, then they can adopt. Similarly, in case of adoption of a married man, the law contemplates that only an unmarried child can be given in adoption. Whereas in case of adoption of a married man or married daughter, then the custom permits, then they can take them in adoption. Of course, those customs should be pleaded and proved only before the competent civil court. So long as the dispute does not arise, the adoption will be valid. Once it is disputed, then it is for the competent civil court to decide whether the essential and valid ingredients of the adoption under the Hindu law was followed or not. And if a person pleads that there was a custom in their community or family for the adopting of child above 15 or married, it is for them to plead and prove by adducing appropriate evidence before the competent civil court to seek declaration that the adoption is valid. This is with regard to the Hindu law, that there is no dispute. Then what about for other faiths? Some faiths, namely Hindu law, recognizes adoption, whereas in case of some faiths like Islam, Christianity, Parsis, they do not recognize adoption, and therefore there cannot be a valid adoption in case the parties are Muslims, Christians, or Parsis. Under those circumstances, what was the procedure that they have followed for adopting a child. In the absence of any secular legislation governing adoption for all subjects in India, what they did was they approached the court under the Guardian and Wards Act 1890 for the appointment of the concerned person as a guardian for the child. Of course, Guardian and Wards Act 1890 is a secular legislation. The court, on finding that the interest of the child would be the paramount consideration in the case of appointment of a concerned person as a guardian, issues an order for the appointment of the concerned person as a guardian. Whether such an order appointing them as a guardian under the Guardians and Wards Act will be sufficient for the adoption of the child, literally speaking, it is not sufficient. It will not amount to any adoption. However, there are certain other orders passed by the court interpreting that it can be a valid adoption that I will come to later. Insofar as Christianity is concerned, the Christianity does not recognize adoption as a valid affiliation. And therefore, the Christians are not in a position to adopt a child. There are certain cases that have cropped up only in the recent stage. The first case on the point of adoption of a child in the Christianity came up before the Kerala High Court. The Kerala High Court, that was in 1999. The Kerala High Court, the judgment which I would like to tell you, Phillips Alfred Malvin versus Y.J. Consavis and others. The judgment reported in AR 1999, Kerala 187. The issue before the Kerala High Court was whether the adoption of a child by a Christian parent is valid or not, whether the Christianity recognizes such adoption. The court, though the Christianity as such does not approve or recognize the adoption as a filiation, there are clauses in the clauses 110 and 111 in the Canon Society of America. Canon Society of America, which speaks, if any adoption was taken as per the municipal law of the concerned state, then the concerned person can be treated as a son or daughter. And therefore, the Kerala High Court has held, while interpreting clauses 110 and America, it has held that the adoption, Justice Ribello, an intelligent judge who dealt with the issue in the judgment rendered by him in Manuel Theodore D. Souza. Manuel Theodore versus D. Souza and another, that is Roman letter 2, 2000 DMC 292. 2000 DMC 292. In this case, Justice Rebello, who dealt with the case, has posed a question to the court. The question which he has posed is whether a civilized state committed to rule of law and it is governed by a written constitution and is a signatory to the International Convention on Right to Child can deny a section of its citizens to adopt a child and to give the child a name, a home, and the nationality. This was the question posed by him. And the Justice Rebello independently has gone into the issue and has held adoption of a child by a citizen of India is a fundamental right that emanates from Article 21 of the Constitution of India. So, no law which can prevent the person, whether he belongs to Christianity or otherwise, from adopting a child, which he got such right through Article 21 of the Constitution. You know, the right to liberty, no person shall be deprived of his right to life except according to the procedure established by law. And there are so many judgments. The Article 21 was interpreted elastically by various courts. It gives rise to so many rights: right to shelter, right to life, right to privacy. Likewise, right to adoption was made a fundamental right by Bombay High Court. But the Supreme Court has not approved it. I will come to later. And this was the position insofar as Christian law is concerned. Though the Christian law, Christianity in as such does not recognize adoption under the canon law of America. And if adoption is made as per the municipal law of the concerned country, that is accepted by them. And therefore, adoption by a Christian is also permissible in the light of canon law, in the light of judgment rendered by Kerala and Bombay High Court. This is with regard to position of personal law among the Christians. Then we can come to the personal law of Muslims. Muslim personal law, as we say, Muhammadan law. If you take Mullah's Muhammadan law, as a forward by Justice Hidayatullah, as he then was, then Chief Justice, then Vice President of India. He says the very nomenclature, Muhammadan law, is offending. We can't say that it is a Muhammadan law. It is not the law that was revealed or given by Muhammad, the Prophet, peace be upon him. And it is the divine law. And it is revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And therefore, it can be said either Muslim law or Islamic law. And this term of Muhammadan law was given by the Britishers for their own reasons, according to Justice Hidayatullah. Whatever it be, it may be. Now, the position of Muhammadan law is, before the Quranic law, before the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there were practice of adoption among the Arabs. Even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has also adopted a son by name Zaid, Z-A-I-D, Zaid. And he was originally the son of Haris. And after the adoption, the Prophet called him Zaid bin Muhammad, meaning thereby Zaid, son of Muhammad. The moment the adoption was taken, and he called him as Zaid bin Muhammad, that is son of Muhammad, a revelation has come from the God. As you know, Quran has not revealed to the Prophet in one day. It was revealed to him for over 23 years. In depending upon the circumstances, it was revealed. So after this adoption, a chapter was revealed to Prophet Muhammad through the angel. The chapter called Al-Ahzab, A-L-A-H-Z-A-B, Al-Ahzab. This is chapter 33 in Holy Quran. In this chapter, verse number 4 and 5, God comments, Prophet, Allah has not made adopted son your sons. You may call the adopted son as your sons through your mouth, but the Allah has not made the adopted son your sons. Muhammad, call the adopted son after their father. After revelation of these verses in Al-Ahzab, then Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, called his adopted son Zaid as Zaid bin Haris. Earlier he called Zaid bin Muhammad, son of Muhammad. Then later, after coming into this, after this verse was revealed to Prophet, then he started calling his adopted son Haris as Zaid as Zaid bin Haris, meaning thereby Zaid, son of Haris. And therefore, the Quran expressly forbids adoption, but it does not forbid taking care of the children. It only forbids adoption of the children. There is foster son is different from the adopted son, we know. The foster son can have the caring of a person without any rights and responsibilities. Whereas in case of adopted son, he will have all rights and responsibilities, including right to inheritance. Under the Islamic law, adopted son is not entitled to inherit the property of adopted father because the adoption as such is not recognized. But there is a practice in Islam called kafala, that is Kafala, kafala, by which the kafala is the system of taking care of the children, giving them food, shelter, education, everything, as if adopting a child without conferring any right to inheritance. Such system is called the kafala system. And the person who takes a child under the kafala system is called kafil. That is Kafil, kafil. Kafil. This system is there, but the practice of adoption is not there in Islam. This is with regard to Quran. Then you know, there is no codified law for Muslims in Islam, but we can we only follow Shariat, and that has also got statutory recognition by enactment of Muslim Personal Law within bracket Shariat application bracket closed Act 1937. Muslim Personal Law Shariat Application Act 1937. There are only 3 sections. If you take the Act, there are only 3 sections. Section 2 says, notwithstanding anything, any customs or notwithstanding anything to the contrary, any custom or usage to the contrary, in all questions, say so and so, regarding intestate succession, special property of females, including personal property inherited, obtained under the contract or gift or any other provision of personal law, marriage, dissolution of marriage, including talaq, ila, jihar, lian, kula, and mubarak. These are all the forms of dissolution of marriage. Maintenance, dower, guardians, gifts, trust and trust properties, and works other than the charities and charitable institutions, and charitable and religious endowments. The rule of decision in cases where the parties are Muslims should be Muslim Personal Law, Shariat. And therefore, Section 2 recognizes Shariat is the law governing inheritance, succession, marriage, divorce, work, all trust. So the law applicable to the Muslims will be the Shariat law, insofar as these fields are concerned. Then, if you if you read Section 3, Section 3 says, though Section 2 excludes customs and usage to the contrary, Section 3 gives precedence to customs. It says any person who satisfies the prescribed authority, that he is a Muslim. B, that he is a competent to contract within the meaning of Section 11 of the Contract Act. C, that he is a resident of the territories to which Act extends, may by declaration in the prescribed form and filed before the prescribed authority declare that he desires to obtain the benefit of the provisions of this section, and thereafter the provisions of Section 2 shall apply to declarant and all his minor children and their descendants, as if in addition to the matters enumerated therein, adoption, wills, and legacies were also specified. What Section 3 says, Section 2 says, notwithstanding to the customs or usage to the contrary, personal law, Shariat will provide if he is a Muslim. Section 3 says, if a person makes a declaration, insofar as 3 subjects are concerned, That is, three subjects are adoption, wills and legacies. If declaration is made that I will be bound by section 2, then section 2 will apply insofar as these three subjects are also concerned. Otherwise, for a Muslim, if he pleads custom, in case of adoption, there is a custom prevalent in my family or in my community that we have a practice of adoption. If he is able to prove that there is such a custom, then he is entitled to adopt a child in the light of section 3 of Muslim Personal Law, Shariat Application Act 1937. That is what the intent of section 3. Section 2 excludes custom. Section 3 gives precedence to custom. If a person who do not want that he is bound by such custom, he may make a declaration that he can be bound by section 2. In such a case, then Shariat Act will apply insofar as these three subjects are concerned. That is adoption, wills and legacies. And therefore, section 3 gives precedence to customs. In case of any customs, then they can adopt a child in the light of such customs. In fact, this section 3 was considered by our High Court. Justice Nainar Sundaram J. as he then was. In the judgment reported in Maulvi Muhammad and others versus Mahbub Beham, the judgment reported in 1983, 2 MLJ 357. Judgment was rendered by Justice Nainar Sundaram J. as he then was. Section 3 was considered and interpreted by Justice Nainar Sundaram to the effect that though section 2 contemplates applicability of Sharia for Muslims in the matter of inheritance, successions, and so on, gift, marriage, or divorce, insofar as three subjects, adoption, wills, and legacies. If a person pleads customs in his community, in his tribe, then he is entitled to adopt a child. He is entitled to adopt a child according to this, according to Justice Nainar Sundaram, and therefore section 3 was interpreted. The judgment rendered by Justice Nainar Sundaram J, holding that adoption is also possible among the Mohammedans, Muslims, was cited before Allahabad High Court, before the division bench of Allahabad High Court, where Justice Kajju was the presiding judge. That was the judgment that is reported in judgment reported in Muhammad Atik Khan versus Union of India. There is judgment reported in 2003, 3 AWC, page 1818, Allahabad. Division bench presided over by Justice Kajju J. This judgment of Madras High Court was cited before. You can find the cases referred number 1 AR 1984 Madras. There was the judgment rendered by Justice Nainar Sundaram J. That was cited before him. But this judgment was rejected by this judgment and another judgment of the Jammu and Kashmir High Court. That is reported in AR 1977, Jammu and Kashmir, page 44. These two judgments are cited to hold that the adoption is permissible in Islam, provided the custom is provided there is a custom. That was rejected by Justice Kajju J, sitting in the division bench of Allahabad High Court. The division bench has followed a full bench of Allahabad High Court that was reported in 1888. That is in serial number 3, you may find 1888 ILR 10 Allahabad 290. In this full bench judgment, the three judges of Allahabad High Court has held Quran, the Holy Quran, though adoption was prevalent among the Arabs before the Quranic period, it was expressly forbidden by Quran. Later, in the revelation made to the Prophet, once it is expressly forbidden, the question of adoption in Islam will not arise, and it is an unknown concept among the Muslims, and therefore adoption in Islam was rejected by the full bench. The said judgment was followed by the division bench of Allahabad High Court to hold that the adopted son of the deceased Muslim is not entitled to any right because the adoption was not recognized in Islam. This is with regard to division bench of Allahabad High Court, and the full bench of Allahabad High Court, as I have said, that is Muhammad Allahabad Khan versus Muhammad Ismail, that is reported in ILR 1888, Allahabad 290, as I have said, it's not permissible. As I said earlier, there was no secular legislation till the Parliament has enacted Juvenile Justice Act 2000. Attempt has been made by the government to pass secular legislation in 1972, in 1980, that has failed. And the Juvenile Justice Act was passed in 2000. Before the enactment of Juvenile Justice Act 2000, a writ petition was filed before the Supreme Court of India by Sabnam Hasmi to issue direction to hold that the adoption of a child is a fundamental right under Article 21, relying on the judgment rendered by the Bombay High Court. A writ petition was filed before the court. And in that case, argument was also rendered. And the adoption of a child being the fundamental right that emanates from Article 21, a Muslim is entitled to adopt a child. That was the argument placed before the court. By the time when the hearing was taken, a case was taken up for hearing, Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was passed. The Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was passed to deal with the juveniles in conflict of law, and also for rehabilitation of children. Rehabilitation of children who are in need of care. For these two aspects, the Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was passed. Under Juvenile Justice Act 2000, Chapter 4, Section 41 dealt with adoption of children. It enabled the parties to adopt a child, who are in need of care, and the child who are subject matter of adoption would be orphan, abandoned, or surrendered. So, in the light of the said provision, enabling the parties to adopt a child, the child of orphan, abandoned, and surrendered child. Orphan, as we know, abandoned by the parties, then surrendered in the sense, according to Juvenile Justice Act, a child which was born outside the wedlock without the consent of the parties. That is called a surrendered child. So, in the interest of this abandoned, orphan, and surrendered child, provision was made under the Juvenile Justice Act 2000 for adoption of the child. Though the Act is silent about applicability of the Act irrespective of the religion, the Supreme Court in this judgment, that is reported in 2014 4 ACC page 1, that is in Sabnam Hasmi, Supreme Court has held that it will apply to all parties irrespective of the religion. Once the argument was heard in Sabnam Hasmi case, All India Muslim Personal Law Board has intervened as a intervening party and opposed applicability of the Act to Muslims on the ground that there is no concept of adoption in Islam. Argument was rendered by All India Muslim Personal Law Board to the effect that we have got a system of kafala, as I have said earlier, and the kafil who can take care of the child and to foster the child. And this system of kafala is also recognized by international convention, by United Nations, and therefore applicability of law of adoption for the Muslims may not arise. It may be overtaxed, and therefore they pleaded before the Supreme Court that they can be exempted from the applicability of the Juvenile Justice Act insofar as the adoption is concerned. That was recorded by the court in this judgment. However, the argument of All India Muslim Personal Law Board was rejected by Supreme Court, holding that the law will apply to all citizens irrespective of the religion. Though the Act is silent about applicability of the Act to all persons, the Supreme Court has held that it will apply to all. And in the Sabunam Hasmi case, before the Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was enacted, and there was no legislation, secular legislation governing adoption for all subjects, the issue has cropped in, and a letter was addressed by an advocate, the advocate called Lakshmikant Pandey, before the Supreme Court of India, complaining of misuse of children on the pretext of adoption. That was taken up as a PIL by Justice P.N. Bhagavati. And in Lakshmikant case, that is reported in 1984 2 SEC. 1984 2 SEC, page 244. The Supreme Court has analyzed, it's a 3 judges bench judgment rendered by Justice P.N. Bhagavati. The Supreme Court has analyzed the non-enactment of a secular legislation governing the adoption, and it has also recorded the steps taken by the Parliament in tabling 1972 bill, Adoption of Children Bill 1972 and 1980, and the opposition made by the Muslims for 1972 bill, and the opposition made by the Parsis for 1980 bill, and has expressed that it is only an enabling legislation. If a Muslim or a Parsi wants to take adoption, they can resort to this secular legislation. Otherwise, they need not resort to the secular legislation, and therefore, the Supreme Court in Lakshmikant Pandey has expressed anguish over the opposition made by the various parties for the enactment of a secular legislation governing the adoption. In Lakshmikant Pandey case was the first case on the secular adoption, and the Supreme Court has issued guidelines for adoption. In that case, adoption, inter-country adoption of children. Supreme Court has issued guidelines in Lakshmikant Pandey case, and thereafter, after Juvenile Justice Act 2000, as I have said, the Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was confined to adoption of rehabilitation and rehabilitation of abandoned, orphaned, and surrendered children alone. It will not cover the regular adoption, as in the case of Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. So, Act was repealed later. 2000 Act was repealed later, and a new Act called the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015, Act 2 of 2016 was passed by the Parliament. The object behind enactment of 2015 Act was, number one, it is to deal with the juvenile in conflict with law. Number two, it is for the rehabilitation of the abandoned, orphan, abandoned, and surrendered child, and to help the child in need of care. With these objects, in furtherance of the objects given, in furtherance of the provisions under the directive principles of state policy under Part 4 of the Constitution of India, and to give effect to international conventions which the government is a party. This act was enacted, 2015 Act. Act 2 of 2016 was enacted by the Parliament. The juvenile who is in conflict with the law, that is defined under section 2 subclass 3 or 2 subclass 13 of the Juvenile Justice Act, which means ordinarily we use a person who is said to have committed some offense, who is alleged to have committed some offense. Whereas insofar as juvenile is concerned, 2 subclass 13, juvenile is concerned, we should not say the juvenile has committed the offense. A child has committed the offense. We have to say child in conflict with law, means a child who is alleged or found to have committed an offense and who has not completed 18 years of age on the date of commission of such offense. So if a child has committed such an offense, we should not use the child has committed an offense. We have to use the term the child in conflict with law. That is what defined under section 2 subclass 13. And therefore, if you read Juvenile Justice Act 2015 or even 2000 Act, you can find the term the juvenile in conflict with law. Even if a charge sheet is filed against a juvenile, you can find the juvenile in conflict with law under so and so provisions of the Act, right? So under the new Act, 2016 Act, 2015 Act, Act 2 of 2016, Chapter 8 deals with adoption. Chapter 8, Section 56 to 73 deals with adoption. There are various procedures, Chapter 8, Section 56 to 73. There are cumbersome procedure that has been made under Chapter 8 of the Juvenile Justice Act 2015 to ensure that there will not be any misuse or trafficking of children in case of adoption. Section 56, if you see 56 clause 1, an adoption shall be resorted to for ensuring right to family for the orphan, abandoned and surrendered children as per the provisions of this act, the rules made thereunder, and the adoption regulations framed by the authority. So adoption can be resorted to for the orphan, abandoned and surrendered children. Number 2, adoption of a child from the relative by another relative, irrespective of their children, can be made as per the provisions of this act and adoption regulation framed by the authority. As per section clause 2, adoption of a children by a relative is permissible. So for the first time, earlier under 2000 Act, it was confined to adoption of orphan, abandoned or surrendered children alone. Under the 2015 Act, provision has been made under clause 2 of section 56 for the adoption of a relative. Then clause 3, if you find nothing in this act shall apply to the adoption of children made under the provisions of Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956. Then clause 2, if you see clause 2, adoption of a child from a relative by another relative, irrespective of the religion. If you take 2000 Act, this irrespective of religion was conspicuously absent, but that was interpreted by the Supreme Court in Shabnam Hasmi case that it will apply to all subjects irrespective of the religion. Taking cue from the judgment, Act 2000 was repealed and 2015 Act was enacted, wherein it was expressly stated that the act will apply, this adoption of child will apply irrespective of religion. And it also granted exemption to the adoption made under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956. And therefore, Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956 is now saved under the secular legislation, that is Juvenile Justice Act. A Hindu can either opt for adoption under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, and he can also opt for adoption under the Juvenile Justice Act 2015, that is under the secular legislation. If he opt for adoption under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, he can adopt a child without reference to the court. If he opt for adoption under the Juvenile Justice Act, it is permissible only by resorting to court. by approaching the court. That is the subsequent subsequent provisions of the Act contemplates what are the procedures for the adoption of the child. There are various procedures. I should not say that it is a cumbersome. The procedure is intended to ensure that the adoption of the child is not misused, and there should not be any trafficking of child and misuse of children on the pretext of adoption. Section there are who are capable of adopting a child and who can give in adoption are given under section 57, then 58 inter-country adoption, all contemplated under the Act. Then section 63 of the Act contemplates the effects of adoption. What is the effect of adoption? Once a child is adopted under the Juvenile Justice Act, then the adopted child will become the son or daughter of the adopted father, as if the child is a biological son or biological daughter of the adopted father, with all rights, including interstate succession. So that is the effect of adoption under section 63 of the Act. Section 68 creates a central advisory authority for the adoption of the children, and power is also given to the authority to frame regulation. In exercise of power conferred under section 68 of the Juvenile Justice Act 2015, regulation was also framed. The regulation called Juvenile Justice Adoption Regulation 2017. 2017 regulation was framed. As per the said regulation, various procedures have been contemplated. Who is the child who is eligible for adoption, then the procedure, then in-country relative adoption, then the legal procedure under Rule 15, and person who is intended to adopt a child under the Juvenile Justice Act, they will have to register the name for such adoption before the there is a system called, I'll tell you, Central Adoption Resource Authority, and there are specialized adoption agency formed under section 58 of the Act. So there was a committee. They will have to register, and it will be scrutinized by the committee of the specialized adoption agency, and a case would be filed before the court. The court was defined under the Act as district court, family court, or city civil court in the cadre of district judge. So a petition should be moved before the district court or family court, as the case may be, by a person who intend to take adoption with the report of the committee, and the court has to scrutinize whether the adoption adoption intended to be taken is in the interest of the child. The paramount interest of the child would be taken into consideration by the court, and thereafter an order can be passed by the court granting a certificate of adoption. These are all certain procedures contemplated under the Juvenile Justice Act 2015 for the adoption of a child through the court of law. In case of Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, without reference to the court, it can be done. Under the secular legislation, it is permissible only through the court of law after undergoing these procedures. This is with regard to, we need not go into detail, it may take so much of time if we go into the regulation one by one. This is with regard to the secular legislation. Now let us come to the issue how this secular legislation inroad into the personal law. If you see, under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, the object of the act is, it's purely sacrament. It is only to enable the party who take the child in adoption to have a right of funeral rights, and to have the lineage lineage of lineage in his family. That is your object. Whereas in case of secular legislation, that is Juvenile Justice Act, the intention is to rehabilitate the children who in need of the care, who need and need of the care, and it is purely in the interest of the concerned child. In case a Muslim takes a child in adoption under the Juvenile Justice Act, then what would be the effect? As I said, under the section 63, which speaks of effect of adoption, then he will become a biological son. A biological son is entitled to inherit the property after the demise of the adoptive father. Whereas section 2, as I have read out, of Muslim Personal Law Shariat Application Act 1937, which contemplates in case of inheritance, the law applicable to the Muslim is Sharia. Under Sharia, an adoptive son is not entitled to inherit the property. He has no share in the property. So, if a Muslim adopted a child under the Juvenile Justice Act, then the adopted son can he has the right of inheritance under Muslim Personal Law Sharia. He has no right of inheritance. Though no such issue has cropped up as of now, the court may say, in the light of section 1 subclass 4 of the Juvenile Justice Act, which excludes applicability of any act. It starts from the notwithstanding clause, notwithstanding any law contrary to this act. The Juvenile Justice Act 2015 will prevail. So it starts from the notwithstanding non-abstentive clause, section 1(4), if you read, notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the time being in force, the provisions of this act shall apply to all matters concerning the children in need of care and protection and children in conflict with law, including apprehension, detention, prosecution, so on. So, clause 2, procedures and decision or orders relating to rehabilitation, adoption, reintegration, restoration of children in need of care and protection. And therefore, this law will apply, notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the time being in force. And therefore, court may hold, if an issue has come before the court, that a person, a Muslim who was adopted under the Juvenile Justice Act can claim inheritance or not. Court may say yes, in the light of section 1(4). So it will have a precedence. It will prevail over the Muslim Personal Law Shariat Application Act 1937. That is the position. I think that's all with regard to this adoption. My friend has got any questions, you are free to ask me.
Thank you, sir. If there are any questions from the participants, they could either use the raise hand option or they can post the question in the chat box and I'll read it out. There's one participant by the name of Ravani Ukti Naidu who asked if you could repeat the definition of adoption.
Yes, adoption means it's a permanent separation of a child from biological parents and entrusting them to the adoptive parents with all rights, including right of inheritance and other responsibilities. This is called adoption. Just diverting a child from the biological parents and entrusting them to the adoptive parents with all rights and responsibilities.
There's one participant by the name of Shanmuga Rajasetu. Sir, you can ask your question now. You've been unmuted.
Yes. May I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Welcome, sir. You are welcome, Punya, sir.
Yes, sir. Because what is maximum age by which a parent can adopt a child or child, sir? Up to what age?
Under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act.
Yes, sir.
it is 15 years unless the customs permits otherwise under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. Under
Yes,
the
sir.
Juvenile Justice Act,
Yes,
though
sir.
the Act does not prescribe the age limit, the regulation prescribes the age limit.
Yes,
Under
sir.
the regulation, you may see the age restriction depending upon the age of the adoptive father, the person who takes the child in adoption, and the child. And
Yes,
there
sir.
are column that is prescribed under the regulation. You can see that varies. In case of adoption of the opposite sex, under the
Yes.
Hindu Adoption and Maintenance, it is 21 years. Under
Yes,
the
sir.
Juvenile Justice Act, it is 25 years. Adoption
Yes.
of an opposite sex is 25 years under the Juvenile Justice Act. It is 21 in Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. And as you know, it is the Juvenile Justice Act will apply for the child who has not completed 18 years, and therefore adoption of a child up to 18 is permissible under Juvenile Justice Act. Yes, is it clear? Your doubt is clear, Punya sir?
I am very much clear to sir. My doubt is very much clear, sir. Whether a adoptive father at the age of 19 can adopt a child, sir.
At the age of
90, because the adoptive father is aged 90, whether he can adopt a...
Under the regulation, it is there in the regulation. It is there in the regulation. It is for the court to find scrutinize. It is for the
Yes,
court
sir.
to scrutinize, but in the interest of the child, to give the child in adoption, if
Yes.
90 years, yes, up to 90, 100 years. No, under the Juvenile Justice Act, as per the regulation, maximum age
Yes,
limit
sir.
for the adoptive parent would be 55 years.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So
55
beyond
years
55,
maximum.
they cannot make adoption, wise.
They can't take adoption under the Juvenile Justice Act. If you take regulation 4, regulation 5 sub 4, up to
Yes.
4 years, if the child is up to 4 years, the maximum age parent would be 45 years. If the child is between 4
Yes,
and
sir.
8, maximum age of the parent would be 50 years. If the child is
Yes.
between 8 and 18, then the maximum age would be 55 years as per the regulation.
Sir, you said that in 1980, the Adoption of Children Bill 1980 was opposed by the Parsis.
Yes, yes, yes.
So is there any development with regard to Parsis, with regard to adoption, sir, thereafter?
No such development. Thereafter, there was no march of law after that. And it is Juvenile Justice Act 2000 was the only legislation after 1980 bill. There was no development in so far as Parsis are concerned. In fact, now the Juvenile Justice Act 2015 that will apply to Parsis also.
Dr. Andy Badarinath also has a question, so you can.
Yeah. Mr. Ajmal Khan, sir, you have given us a very wonderful talk on the subject. And well, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is under the Hindu Adoptions and Maintenance Act 1956. Who can a third party challenge an adoption of a Hindu that took place under the 56 Act? If so, on what grounds?
Under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, as I said, adoption can be made without reference to the court. In case the adoption is not valid and it is as against the valid conditions prescribed under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, a party, the aggrieved party, is entitled to go to the court and claiming that the adoption is not valid. Your question is that whether the third party is entitled to question the adoption made under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956.
Yes.
The third party, though, has no locus. In case the adoption was made for trafficking or otherwise, in such a case, he is entitled to go to the court to declare that such adoption is not valid, only to that extent. Otherwise, he has no locus.
All right. See, the certain grounds envisaged under 11 of the Act, right?
Yes.
If
Yes,
we,
yes.
if
Listen.
we see, sections
Yes, yes.
11 and 7, both are the
Yes.
requirements in order to constitute a valid adoption.
Valid adoption, yes.
Now,
Yes.
if we see the deed on the face of it, these conditions
Yes.
are satisfied. I'm on an illustration, a case where
Yes.
an adoption has taken
Yes.
place and that was registered,
Yes.
and requirements under this act are more or
Yes.
less are prima facie fulfilled.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
an
Yes.
adoption of that kind
Yes.
wanted to be challenged by
Yes.
uh, by the close family relatives
Yes. Yes. Yes.
of the boy who was given in adoption, on the
Yes,
ground
yes,
that
yes.
the adoption was not
Yes.
valid,
Yes. Yes.
because
He
the
is always entitled to. He is always entitled to, in case the document is registered. If you see section 16 of the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act,
there's a
once the
presumption.
document is registered, when the presumption arises that it is a valid adoption, however, it is subject to, once dispute arose, then evidence is necessary to prove that there is a valid adoption. So once the dispute, this dispute was arised as to the validity of the adoption, despite the fact that the document was registered, still the court is entitled to go into the validity of the adoption. The party who alleges that there is no valid adoption can prove before the court by adducing necessary evidence that the adoption is not valid. It does not satisfy the conditions stipulated under section 11 or section 7. So it is always open to the parties to go before the civil court to adduce evidence to prove that there is no valid adoption. It is permissible.
All right. Then one more question. Where do we find from
Yes.
this enactment the objective of this act, 56 Act?
Under the 1956 Act, it does not contain any object. It's seen, if you read the articles, journals,
Of course.
and the books, you can find, but this act does not find any, does not state the object of the act, unlike Juvenile Justice Act 2015 or 2000, as the case may be.
That's right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So Mr. K.M. Bhupati has a question for you.
Sir, I am Advocate Bhupati from Nellore, sir. How are you, sir?
Welcome, sir. Fine.
Session is very good, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sir, under Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, whether court permission is mandatory, that is question number 1, sir.
Yes.
Under Juvenile Justice Act, court permission is necessary. And what is the
Yes.
legality of registered adoption deed, sir?
Yes. Number 1, under Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, court permission is not necessary. Adoption can be made without reference to the court. Only in case of any dispute, then the parties are required to plead and to prove that there is a valid adoption in the court of law, insofar as adoption under the 1956 Act. Number 1. Number 2, under the Juvenile Justice Act, adoption is permissible only through the court of law. Only through the court of law. Number 3, in case of registration of the document, the provision is there for the registration of the document under section 16 of the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. It gives rise to presumption only. Presumption that there is a valid adoption. Only to that extent that is valid. Once the dispute arose as to the genuinity or the validity of the document, then it is always open to the parties to go before the concerned court to say that there is no valid adoption. It is always there. And the Juvenile Justice Act does not contemplate registration of the document. once order was passed by the court, a certificate can be given by the concerned authority of the specialized agency formed by the state, certifying that there is a valid adoption. That is there, but the registered document is not required.
Thank you.
In fact, there is an issue. It's an issue that arose in Madurai bench of Madras High Court. I was appointed as amicus, a Muslim who got an adoption, who filed an adoption deed before the office of sub-registrar, but was refused to register by the sub-registrar. A writ petition is filed for directing the sub-registrar to register the adoption deed. That writ petition is pending before the Madurai bench, wherein I was appointed as an amicus. I have submitted that such registration cannot be done. It will runs into so much of time. Even the registration of some marriages, registration of divorce deed, my marriage deed by the office of sub-registrar. The marriage is registered by the marriage registrar, we can understand under the relevant provisions of the Act, Special Marriage Act or Hindu Marriage Act or the Tamil Nadu Compulsory Registration of Marriage Act, then we can understand. The marriage, some documents are registered as if it's a document of alienation, document of sale deed, or likewise before the office of sub-registrar, whether such document can be registered or not. Such issue came up before Madurai bench earlier. I was appointed as an amicus curiae. Justice D. Murugesan J. and Justice Satyanarayanan J. has rendered an order, and they issued direction to the Inspector General of Registration not to entertain any document for registration of marriage or registration of divorce, because so many cases of habeas corpus has come before the court, claiming that so and so is my wife. I have got my marriage registered under the marriage deed. Marriage deed registered by the sub-registrar, not by the office of, not by the registrar of marriages under the relevant relevant act. So the registration is not made. There is no provision for registration under the Juvenile Justice Act. No provision under the Indian Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956. Yes.
There's a question from Ms. Lalita N. She had also commented during the session that CARA is the nodal agency under the Juvenile Justice Act. Ma'am, you've been unmuted. You can ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please, you can direct your question.
Oh. Can I post my question?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you're on.
Yes, madam, I am here.
Yes, yeah, sir. I am the advocate from Madras High Court, and I'm also the CWC member of North Zone Chennai. I have a small doubt, sir. In terms of inheritance,
Yes,
in terms of the Islamic law of adopting a child, I just want to know whether how far or how extent the will returned by the adoptive parents will prevail over the right to inheritance in terms of an adoptive child of an Islamic parent.
As per Islamic Sharia, there is a bequeathable 1/3. A person, a Muslim, is entitled to write a will to the extent of 1/3 of his properties.
Yes, sir.
If the yes, if so, to the extent of 1/3 of his total estate, it is valid. If it is beyond 1/3, then that is not valid. To that extent, it is not valid. Understand, madam?
Yes,
Have
yeah,
I
but
made myself clear?
yes, yeah, but still I have a
Yes.
small question, sir. In terms of this adoptive child, wherein the Islamic law doesn't recognize the adoption, so we can exclude the child,
Yes.
though the
Yes, that is what
so
I
in terms
said.
of adoption, yes.
Yeah, that is why I said earlier,
Hmm.
Islamic Sharia exclude adoptive children from
Yes.
inheritance
Yes.
under the Sharia. Whereas if the adoption is made under the Juvenile Justice Act 2015, that the adoptive child is able to claim inheritance. Section 1 subclass 4, in the light of section 1 subclass 4, which excludes the applicability of any other law for the time being in force for the adoption of the Juvenile Justice Act 2015, has got a provision under section 63 of the Act that once adoption is affected, then the effect of adoption, consequences of the adoption is the adopted child will become biological son of the adoptive father. right of inheritance.
There are a couple of more questions. There's one question from Mr. S.A. Ajmal Khan. Sir, I've unmuted you. You can ask your question.
So I have one doubt.
Morning.
If two different religious, that is Muslim as well as the Christian,
Yes,
they
yes.
want to renounce their religion. They want to renounce their religion,
Yes.
but they want to adopt a child. What is the statute present position?
Yes.
What is the statute available in the present position? Because I am renounced my religion. I am not.
They can. I understand. They can. Yes. They can resort to adoption under the Juvenile Justice Act, which is a secular legislation. They can resort to Juvenile Justice Act 2015. Adoption can be made. That is permissible.
Okay. Like a special marriage act. My question is, it's like a special marriage act.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, like a special marriage act, they can resort to Juvenile Justice Act 2015.
With respect to the age of the child that is being adopted, so since Juvenile Justice Act is pertaining to children below 18 years of age, does it also limit the age of the child that is being adopted? Sorry, my connection was not fine at that time. I believe that you had already explained this. Could you please repeat it, sir? With regard to the age limit
Yes.
of the child that is being adopted, with respect to both personal and secular law?
Yes. Under the Hindu Adoption Maintenance Act, the maximum age of the child would be 15, unless the custom permits adoption of the child above 15. The maximum age of the child would be 15 under the Hindu Adoption Maintenance Act. Under the Juvenile Justice Act, regulation prescribes certain limits. I read it. Up to 4 years. Up to 4 years, maximum age of the parent would be 45 years. Between 4 and 8, maximum age of the parent would be 50 years. Between 8 and 18, maximum age of the parent would be 55 years. So under the Juvenile Justice Act, maximum age of the juvenile for adoption would be 18, less than 18. Under the Hindu Adoption Maintenance Act, it is 15. Under the Juvenile Justice Act, even the persons who take the child in adoption should also possess this qualification. Their age limit was also prescribed under the regulation.
By the way, my question is, sir, since it is pertaining to your personal law, I am asking. Now you said that by personal law, the inheritance is excluded. While saying so, you said that under Juvenile Justice Act, class 1-4 is there. But my question is, have you examined any, have you seen any cases where the exclusion of inheritance under the personal law has been challenged before any court of law under the constitutional provisions, and whether any judgment has been delivered, such exclusion is illegal?
No issue has cropped up as of now, because Juvenile Justice Act 2015 is up to it.
No, I'm not asking about the Juvenile Justice Act. I am telling about your personal law, excluding the inheritance. So that any exclusion inheritance act has been tested under Article 14 with reference to other acts.
Actually, that has not been challenged the way as you have said, but in other way, it was considered by the Supreme Court. In the recent judgment of the Supreme Court, that is in Suraya Begum case, that is
okay.
Triple Talaq case.
Okay, yeah.
That was considered by the constitutional bench of Supreme Court, wherein the Supreme Court has said, under Article 13, you know, in case any law, the Article 13 clause 4, if any law which was in force at the time of commencement of the Constitution, if it offend Part 3 of the Constitution, the law will be invalid to the extent of to that extent, to the extent of that violation of Part 3 of the Constitution of India. Likewise, under Article 13, Clause 2 of the Constitution of India, if any law the legislature passes, if it offend Part 3 of the Constitution, the law will be invalid to that extent to the contrary. It was argued before the court in Suraya Begum case that that Muslim personal law should pass the test of Article 13, Clause 1. if it offend, if the Muslim personal law offend Article 13, Clause 1, that is the provision under the Part 3 of the Constitution of India, then the personal law will be invalid. But that was rejected by the Constitution bench, holding that it should not pass the test of Article 13, Clause 2. That is the judgment of Constitution bench in Surya Begum case. That is triple talaq case. The judgment was authored by Justice Kurian Joseph J. Sir, have I made myself clear, sir?
Yes, sir. I'm very much thankful to you. But the inheritance has been specifically declared as a violation of Constitution. Is there any judgment?
No direct judgment on that point.
Thank you. I don't want to take much time. You are.
I dealt with the case on behalf of the adopted parents. A third child of a biological parent was adopted by the my client as per the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. The deed of adoption was drafted, and after following the procedure contemplated, the child was adopted. Subsequently, what happened? Some anonymous calls was received by the child life protection officer, and case was registered under Section 80 and 81 of the Juvenile Justice Act, alleging that the child was sold to the to my client. And case was registered, and subsequently child was recovered, and it was handed over to an NGO, and it was there in the child was there in the home.
Yes.
Then I filed a HEP before the Madurai bench, stating it was adopted because the Juvenile Justice Act will not be applicable to the cases where the child was adopted under the Hindu Marriage Act. Sorry, Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, as per Section 56, subclause 3 of the Juvenile Justice Act. I filed a HEP. And the registry raised a maintainability, stating that HEP will not be maintainable. Then it was listed before the honorable bench for maintainability, and maintainability. The objection raised by the registry was sustained, stating that the child protection officer has recovered the child or secured the child as per the Juvenile Justice Act. Therefore, it cannot be stated as illegal custody. Therefore, HEP will not be maintainable. Then subsequently, I filed a quash petition to quash the FIR. Now at this stage, now what would be, my question is, what would be the remedy available to the adoptive father, the parents, to secure the child, to get back the child?
You will have to clear your case. Criminal case is registered.
Yes.
In fact, custody was taken only in furtherance of powers conferred under the Juvenile Justice Act. They are entitled to take custody of the children if they found that there is a violation of the provisions of the Act, and the children was taken in adoption, misusing the provisions of law for purpose other than the purpose contemplated under the Act. They are entitled to take. Since you are facing criminal proceedings, you have to clear your case. Criminal proceedings in the court of law. Then you are entitled to take adoption. Otherwise, you can also go before the concerned court, civil court, for declaration to declare the alleged adoption is valid, and you can also ask for the mandatory direction directing Juvenile Justice Board to entrust the custody of the child to you. That can be done if you are able to prove that the adoption is in accordance with the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, satisfying all valid conditions enumerated under Section 11(7)(8), then you will succeed.
Whether the adoption deed, yes, sir. The adoption deed is required to be registered before the
Not necessary. Not necessary. If adoption deed is registered, it will give rise to presumption that the adoption is valid. In case any dispute, then it has to be proved in the manner known to law. That's all. Registration of adoption deed is not necessary. Section 16 of the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act only contemplates in case adoption deed is registered, then presumption will arise that it is valid. That's all. Now the dispute arose. then it has to be proved proved before the court of law. In the manner
We have to
known
file a suit. We have to file a suit.
necessarily you will have to file a suit. And I remember you said you adopted the third son or not? If
Third
what
child.
is
Third
the
child.
third child? Third child is the son or adopted child?
Daughter. It's a female child.
Do you have daughter? Do you have daughter? Already do you have daughter with you? If you have daughter,
Yes.
biological daughter, then
Yes.
you are entitled. You are not entitled to adopt a daughter again.
No. The adoptive parent does not have a issue.
Right. Then you are entitled to. You have to go before the civil court.
Yes,
And you can seek declaration. Also seek for interim injunction for the custody of the child. If you are able to prove you have got a pregnancy case, balance of convenience in your favor, you may also get interim injunction in your favor.
Yes.
Mr. Sekhar has a question, so you can speak.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ajmal.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Your lecture was a treat for our years. So my question is, in fact, something connected with the earlier answer which you just now gave. Can an adoptive parent for a second time adopt another child? I remember one case filed by a female in Bombay High Court, where I think when she wanted to adopt a second child, first child itself is an adopted child. And the second child she wanted to adopt, there is a bar, and therefore she filed a writ petition Bombay High Court. I didn't follow it up that case, but what are your views and what is the law say?
The adoption of the second child is not under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Law. Right? Second adoption is not permissible.
Not permissible.
But, yes, but Juvenile Justice Act does not put any embargo on the second adoption.
Maybe we can adopt that. But still, I think there's one Bombay High Court. I think a verdict also came. A female had challenged saying that it is not constitutional because you must be allowed to adopt any number of childs. And the second child restriction is not, it's unconstitutional.
Oh, I don't remember.
Because even the same-sex adoption, even the bar for the same-sex adoption is also bad, something like that. It came. Anyway, I'm not prepared for that. We'll go through the judgment. Thanks.
I don't remember. If you get that judgment, you just to pass on to me. Let me also.
Yeah, I'll make a research and I'll call you and see.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Bhupati has another question, so you could place a question.
Sir, you said no document is required or court permission is required for adoption. Then how we can prove adoption if any dispute arises in the future? That is one question, sir.
Yes.
Second,
yes.
I have gone through a will, sir. A person is executing a will, stating that after his lifetime, all his property should go to his heirs. In Tamil, he mentioned Sandadigal. Ennudiya Sandadigalukku poga vendum. Later on, he died, issueless. And his wife has adopted a son. And whether he will get the properties.
It's a good question. In case he was alive, then the wife has to get consent from him for taking adoption of the child. If now he is not alive and the wife takes the child in adoption, he will become the biological son of the wife. In so far as the adopted child claiming right of inheritance after the demise of father, so far as myself is concerned, on the date of his death, he was not the biological son.
Correct.
We can't create any shareholders after his demise. What has to be seen is who are all the legal heirs on the death of the concerned person. On the date of the death of the concerned person, father, he was not adopted. He was adopted only at a later point of time. The persons who got adoption at a later point of time through the wife of the deceased is not entitled to claim right to property to the husband of his mother. That is not permissible according to me, because he was not the adopted son on the death of the concerned person. Number one. Number two, the other question which you asked. So registration of the document. Registration of the document is made optional only under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. Though the registration of document of deed of adoption is not required, it is advisable. It is advisable to prove the validity of the adoption if the dispute arose, and therefore the registration of the deed of adoption under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act is advisable. Advisable because unlike Juvenile Justice Act, we are not approaching the court for the adoption of the child, and therefore, though it is not mandatory, it is advisable to get the deed of adoption registered for the purpose of evidentiary value of the such adoption.
Thank you very much, sir. Because of want of time, I think we have to restrict some more people who are more interested in having so much of clarifications coming forward. It has been a very wonderful session, very erudite subject which you have dealt with. The success of the program is in fact very explicitly seen from the nature of queries which are coming up. I also thought that I may have to just read through some of the posts in the chat box. I find that one of the participants, Rajeshwari, has recorded that, excellent session, sir. We are enlightened on the subject. Presently, there are so many doubts on this after several children are reported to be orphaned in this pandemic. Your lecture has clarified such doubts, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Likewise, there have been so many compliments. I'll be taking much of your time if I have to read through everything. There had been also some chat box posts where students who have participated in this session wanted more clarification or wanted more details on particular subjects. We may consider if it is required for another session on that also, because I personally feel that it is unfair for a senior advocate to be retained for so much of time. We all know that how busy you are. And it is also unfair that we cannot ask all the participants to have all their personal queries clarified from a senior advocate at this stage. We only wanted a hindsight view of what the law is, and you have taken us through an excellent session on that subject. We also thank for having spent so much of time with us, sir, for having spent all your efforts in bringing out the best of the law in a very short period of time. Thank you very much, sir. I thank on behalf of all the study circle members and all the participants of this session for this wonderful lecture. We will be often troubling you, if not with these questions, at least some lectures on a particular topic. Thank you very much, sir. I also thank all the participants for having participated this day. Thank you once again. With this, we will end this session.
Thank you. Welcome, sir. Thank you to all.